That shit just ended after 30 seconds. Not even 30 seconds. 24, my nigga. Like what? Anyways, back to our scheduled program.
Exploring its origins in the series. In the comics, it's really convoluted with there being clones, time travels, and so on, and it got to the point they were going to include it in Deadpool 2, but decided not to because they just didn't know where to start. Anyway, the Blackbird's destroyed, and we see the heroes falling. Morph turns into Archangel, which was a later moniker given to Angel that saw him getting silver metal wings. Landing on the ground, the group go to Cyclops, with him then dropping his catchphrase. Coming across Trask and the Master Mold, we then get a metal showdown. Now when I say metal, it's because it's seen as metal as fuck, with Beast even getting inside a Sentinel.
I'm gonna see it again.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful involuntary friendship. Which plays off the famous quote from Casablanca. Storm's also addressed as an Omega level mutant, which denotes a mutant with an unmeasurable amount of power. These are the best of the best of the best, sir, making them some of the most powerful mutants on Earth. Omega level mutants are deemed a top priority to destroy, and with Storm we see why. Bringing in a tornado, we also see an incredible detail with what they do in the environment. The lightning strikes the ground, and this turns the sand into glass. Shows that they were really focusing on how that worked, and it creates a level of authenticity for all your science nerds. Finally, Gambit charges up Wolverine's claws, puts that kinetic energy in it, and we see his morph turns into the Blob to then create a fastball special. Fastball specials are massive things in the comics, and just seeing those claws get charged up, yeah, you can see why this was the money shot of the trailer. Now Baton arrives along with the UN, and we get a really cool moment where we can catch Cyclops' eyes just behind his visor. We manage to stop Trask, and we then cut across to DaCosta, who turns down the opportunity to be in the X-Men. The responsibility isn't for everyone, but I do think that we will see him return. He hands a business card over, and let's see Roberto DaCosta's business card. Very 90s style, with it being like the intro to Saved by the Bell. The game of basketballs then interrupted by Magneto, with him paying the utmost respect to Charles. This is something the character shared in every iteration, with him always believing that Charles was his equal. The will reveals that Magneto is now in charge, with everything being left to him. Swagnito is here, and we then cut to the outro. This again is a recreation, with it riffing off the select player thing that was a staple of the 90s show. So cool seeing it recreated here, but they've gone with animated avatars instead of the 3D models that appeared in the original. Now from here we jump to episode 2 and get some shots of Storm taking down a baddie rocking her original hair. The person she's knocking down also looks like it might be Callisto. This is who we see later in the episode, being held hostage by the Friends of Humanity. We also have Jean turning into the Phoenix before seeing Bishop spiraling through time. Lastly, an added shock comes with Magneto aboard Asteroid M. Magneto built this originally after recruiting his kids Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and over the years it's gone through several iterations. Now we begin at Coney Island with a famous Ferris wheel being the centre of an action scene. This little kid here reminds me of another kid we've seen at Coney Island, with a young Peter Quill attacking it in What If Season 2. Either way, Magneto's here to save the day, with him clearly showing that he's now one of the goodies. Cut across to a war room, and this feels like it's ripped right out of Doctor Strangelove. The world is wondering what's going on with him, and we then travel across to Executioner. We see a tape that says 104, and this could be a nod to X-Men 104, which featured the new X-Men lineup going against Magneto for the first time. There's also a wall full of the X-Men, which shows it's all connected. Guys got several bills past due, and a newspaper article that says no more mutants. This is a reference to Wanda's words in House of M, which ended up devouring most of the mutants on Earth. Cut across to Leech and the gang, which is when Magneto attacks. Hitting them to the wall, it's reminiscent of the end of the first X-Men movie, in which he used the same tactic at the Statue of Liberty. We get a proper look at Magneto's costume as well, and they have such a cool Easter egg with it later on. The episode is of course built around the trial of Magneto, which in itself was a comic book story. That took place in Uncanny X-Men 200, with the cover showing Magneto in handcuffs. This later gets directly referenced in the episode when they have him shown in the exact same position. The comic was important for a number of different reasons, as it also showed his reformation to a good guy. Madeline Pryor was also featured as well, with her being a big part of the ending. And from here, we cut across to the X-Mansion with Beast quoting Mark Twain.
Do you wanna?
The only safe and sure way to destroy your enemy is to make him your friend.
Magneto comes in and brings up the Morlocks, who were a race named after the monsters from the book The Time Machine. Similar to them, they lived underground and were outcasts from society that had to hide away. Led by Callisto, this was actually the group he saved before, and we discover that he hasn't let them to die. He's used Charles's resources to find them a sanctuary, and it is a bit disappointed the X-Men didn't do it before.
Why?
But you see, kids, Magneto, he's kind of doing the best for mutants that he can, whereas them bloody X-Men, they always try and suck up to the humans. The X-Men will regularly put humanity above themselves, whereas with the Brotherhood, it's the other way around. Guy seems to have changed though, and rather than killing the friends of humanity, he's trying to coexist. Cut across to Storm and Jean. Well, you know, I'm just going to keep calling her Jean, but she talks about her Marvel Girl costume. Jean brings up being possessed on the blue side of the moon, which is a direct reference to an earlier episode. That happened in Season 3, Episode 14, with it being a part of the Dark Phoenix saga. Cut across to Magneto, now looking over his helmet. Rogue wants to look at his helmet too, and he reveals that he could often feel Charles in his mind. Rather than trying to sway him, he was simply observing. Sorry for that joke there, by the way. Anyway, Magneto created the helmet that blocked telepathy. However, now Charles is gone, he no longer needs it. Still, though, he keeps it as a memento, as it kind of reminds him of the love that Charles used to have for him. Charles observing him let him know that he cared, and that he was a true friend through thick and thin. After some tensions from the past arise with Rogue, we then see the UN arriving. Feeling threatened, he ends up spinning the helicopters and creating a circle of death. Very reminiscent of the train station scene in X-Men, but here he decides to hand himself in. This means that all of his past givings will be cleared, and he'll no longer be hunted by the authorities. They place an inhibitor collar on his neck, and we then cut to a WHIH report. Wolverine mentions Asteroid M and throws some shade at Janeline for sliding off with Cyclops. The trial is then bombarded with protesters, with similar ones being carried out in the original series. In the van, Executioner mounts up, and we see his costume being in line with his original comic book look. Magneto is then taken before the UN in a moment that's eerily similar to where Charles was shot. Magneto also references his Jewish heritage and how they were hunted during the Second World War. Even after escaping this, Magneto was still treated differently, and he's been subject to prejudice his entire life. We then see his mutants around the world watch, including the Morlocks. The wall then shows his thoughts as it transforms into the Sentinels, and we also get a direct reference to Slave Island. In that episode, Jubilee and Gambit were forced to wear collars too, which we see playing out here. The trial is broken up by the arrival of Executioner, who wants to kill the judges for hearing out the mutants. Logan goes to rush out, but Jean goes into labor.
He's here!
Apocalypse?
Nah, worse than Ensabar, no mate. Jean's going into labor. Racing across in his classic...
He was so serious. He done brought out his claws and everything. Who? Apocalypse.
Were forced to wear collars too, which we see playing out here. The trial is broken up by the arrival of Executioner, who wants to kill the judges for hearing out the mutants. Logan goes to rush out, but Jean goes into labor.
He's here!
Apocalypse?
Nah, worse than Ensabar, no mate. Jean's going into labor. Racing across in his classic 90s Jeep, we see a sign for Wine's Cafe, which is a reference to Len Wine. Alongside it's also a shop called Romita's Salon. This is a reference, I don't know why I said like that, but this is a reference about John Romita Sr. and Jr., the both of which worked on the comics. There's also Roy Thomas Street 2, with him being a writer and editor at Marvel Comics. I love how Jean's powers go haywire as she's in pain, and we see the UN gets attacked by the protesters. Fighting against Cyclops, he ends up grabbing his visor, but Scott just closes his eyes. This shows his restraint, because the guy could easily fuck X up.
Exactly.
He chooses to keep them closed, because there could be potential harm to others. Morph then busts in as Lady Death strike before turning into Colossus. Finally we get Psylocke, and it makes me think that Morph can make weapons powerful enough to block swords and stuff. At the hospital, the doctors refuse to deliver a mutant baby, and this is in case the powers go haywire. Rogue ends up touching the doctor, and this absorbs all his knowledge. This is how she got her powers in the first place, with it being something that was taken from Captain Marvel. I had no idea she could absorb people's skills too, and I wonder if they'll have this playing with Magneto. Now we go to the UN, where Magneto and Storm attempt to stop the protesters, and Aurora ends up taking the bullet for Eric. Executioner arrives carrying a neutralizer gun, which in itself is a direct nod to the comics. In those, Storm also lost her powers, which is something we see happening here. In the source material, the neutralizer was created by Forge, which Henry Garrick then ended up firing. Obviously, we had a similar situation with Charles, and it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with her losing her abilities. Magneto then reveals his Omega-level powers and carries the UN out into space. Such an incredible moment that I feel to stand out in the 2 episodes, with it feeling like an operatic, epic journey into space. Magneto refuses to give in to his dark side though, and looking over the world, he explains he's there to protect it. While this is going on, Nathan is born, with him getting the middle name Charles after Professor X. Curtis Storm learning her abilities are suppressed indefinitely, and for the first time in her life, she's scared by lightning. Leaving the X-Men, we hear her file letter and see the friendships and love between the group. Nathan brings love to his parents, and Rouge...
Human beings are so fragile. You are part of our family.
Magneto get a little closer. Now you're probably wondering why Magneto can touch Rogue. I know you're you dirty bad boy, and this is because she's someone who absorbs everyone's life force. This was explained in Age of Apocalypse when the pair hooked up in the Savage Land. Both use powers based around magnetism, which is how Rogue can also fly. I think. Didn't really explain it, but basically their magnetic abilities cancelled each other out, and this is how they're able to touch. It's sheer magnetism. Now Morph then changes into Sabretooth to get Wolverine's attention, and it seems like a positive way to close out. Our Gambit can be seen holding the Queen of Hearts, which he ends up dropping as Rogue leaves Magneto's room. Rogue is the Queen of his heart, and say kids, that's subtext for you there. Also, I love the sass he gives to Magneto later on, and he blames him for what happened with Storm. Taking the bus out of there, she's reduced to having to use public transport, whereas in the past she used to fly. She describes her memories as being like another woman's life, and we see another woman has taken over Jean's. Arriving at the mansion is Jean, the real Jean, with Nathan's mother obviously being Madeline Pryor. And that takes us into what's going on here, and if you don't want to know, then turn off now. Guessing they will change things slightly for the future, but I will be going through the bare bones of her story. Also, hit a thumbs up on the way out, mate. You've watched it long enough, yeah? Do me a favour, yeah? I'll give you some good jokes, yeah? Anyway, in the wake of Jean's death, Madeline met Scott in Alaska, and everyone noticed a striking resemblance to her. People thought that she might be Jean Reborn, and Professor X also couldn't access her mind. You see, Madeline was apparently the sole survivor of a plane crash that happened the moment that the Dark Phoenix died. Well, that's what the story that was given to her said, with her actually being created by Mr. Sinister.
Exactly.
Sinister wanted to create a mutant that was extremely powerful, so he had a way to carry out his own ends. Sinister also wanted her to have a child with Scott, and this would give him a weapon. Thus Nathan was born, which they're clearly paying homage to. Now, at the time of writing this video, I haven't seen episode 3, right? We did get early access to it, but I wanted to hold off because it takes time away from working on this, and it also means that I can't do theory time. I'll be getting in trouble off Disney if they're like, we're going to see you've watched it, mate, and you see me be nailing every single theory, so Kevin Feige's coming round, and he's bringing his sniper rifle too. So I'm just being careful, haven't clicked it yet, but I do think Sinister will be involved in some way or the other, as we of course had him pop up during the intro with Morph. It could add an extra layer into it, as we've got 2 characters that are both affected by him. Really excited to see where it goes, and yeah, I have to say that I love these 2 episodes. Gonna be honest, mate, been so hit and miss with Marvel lately, with me often feeling disappointed by most of their releases. Look, I love Loki Season 2, I enjoyed What If, and I enjoyed Guardians 3 as well, but I think there's definitely been a lot of mid-projects released that haven't quite hit the mark. So going into this, I was worried, but as soon as that theme tune started up, I'm a sucker for nostalgia. As soon as that started up, I was so happy with how it was playing out. Everything just got better from that point on, and I think both episodes were really solid and managed to perfectly recapture that original 90s feel. Took me back to when I was a kid. It was like I never left. And yeah, if the rest of the series is at this level, then I'm going to be really happy. Obviously, I'd love to hear your thoughts too. Do you agree? Am I shilling? Am I back to shilling? Please drop a like as well, and if you want to support the channel as a member of the Spoiler Society...
Oh, Apocalypse.
Kong was the last of his kind.
Oh, damn.
What else were we wrong about?
Try Old Spice Total Body with 24/7 freshness.
Total body.
Hits to
Total body. Total body. Total body.
Oh, yes.
Hey, welcome back to Screen Crush.
To me,
This is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the first episode of X-Men 97. Guys, there is so much to cover here with this episode drawing from the X-Men animated series. We have a full recap of the series up right now on the channel, by the way. And this episode also pulls heavily from the Chris Claremont run of the comics. There are hundreds of behind-the-scenes details and tidbits that I can't wait to share with you. But first, I have a special announcement to make. We have dropped these brand new X-Men parody shirts.
We don't give a damn. We don't give a fuck.
Hey! There's this X-Men Nighthawks parody by
Don't start no shit. Bring no shit.
And of course, Doug as Wolverine. And right now, for just 1 week, all this merch is 15% off. Thanks so much for visiting our store. It really does help us out. So let's break this episode down. Now, I realize that some of you may not have even been alive when the original X-Men series was released, but it was a groundbreaking show that, in a lot of ways, is responsible for the MCU. The creators of the show, Eric and Joya Lewell, had the audacity to create a Saturday morning cartoon show that was loyal to the ethos of the X-Men comics. Now, these were heroes who were burdened by their powers, who were filled with self-loathing.
Why is this happening to me? I used to be a normal kid. It's not my fault.
And trust me, you did not see this kind of thing on Saturday mornings. The only real drawback to the show was the quality of the animation, which was ambitious but had a very limited budget. They crammed each episode full of so many more shots than any other series on TV. On average, twice as many shots as Batman the Animated Series, which debuted the same month and had a much bigger budget. And now, this series finally has a sizable animation budget, and I'm going to point out all these new details they added as we go along. Now, this show is animated with new technology, but producer Brad Winderbaum said that a small video transfer effect was put over the animation to give it a 1990s television patina quality.
Hey, what did you mean the show is responsible for the MCU?
Well, the original X-Men movie was greenlit in part because of the success of the animated show, and the movie even borrowed the structure of the first few episodes. But also, the show was one of the very first projects ever produced by Marvel Studios, so now it has finally come full circle. So, here's a little recap on where we left off in case you haven't had time to watch our full recap video. Professor Xavier was shot by a special weapon that amplified his powers and was killing him. This caused mutant uprisings around the planet, and just as Magneto was about to rally mutant kind to take over the world, the X-Men asked for his help to save his best friend's life. He used his powers to amplify Charles's abilities so they could call out to Lilandra.
Who's that?
Lilandra is the empress of the alien empire called the Shi'ar, and she and Xavier are in love. Lilandra takes Xavier to space to hopefully cure him, but Xavier says goodbye to each member of the X-Men.
Just a second, person. I have received a text from
Boy, I'm about to say, what the fuck? I look dead ass at my phone. Look. I didn't see nothing.
But the CEO.
Dude, we don't have a CEO. It's a scam.
Oh, well, how'd they get my number?
Man, that is the messed up part. Great deal that you don't want to miss. Now, back to what I was saying. So, we start with a brand new Marvel animation intro. Now, What If always used a modified Marvel Studios intro. So I think this is a sign that the rumors are true and the Marvel Studios is actually looking to expand its animation footprint. And if they keep making shows this good, I am all for it. This show, these two episodes that I've seen are the best Marvel since Guardians 3. So, a few Easter eggs in the show. First, there's a classic X-Men score. is this good, I am all for it. This show, these 2 episodes that I've seen are the best Marvel since Guardians 3. So, a few Easter eggs in this opening. First, notice how the classic X-Men theme was worked into the score. Also, the intro functions as a kind of history of Marvel animation. We start off with the barely animated 60s Spider-Man cartoon, which was paired brilliantly here and across the Spider-Verse. And then notice Herbie the Robot. Now, this was from the 1960s Fantastic Four series, when the rights to Johnny Storm and the Human Torch were actually unavailable. So they invented a robot to be the 4th member of the team. We also saw Herbie in the early concept art for the new Fantastic Four film, which is also going to be set in the 60s. And then, of course, we see X-Men the animated series, followed by the Silver Surfer. And this was an interesting inclusion. So, X-Men kicked off the Marvel cartoon renaissance, leading to the excellent Spider-Man the animated series and Fantastic Four cartoons. Now, the company that made X-Men, Baton, got stinking rich from producing another Saturday morning show. So then, this notoriously thrifty studio decided to invest huge amounts of money in a groundbreaking and beautiful Silver Surfer TV series. The show was a spectacle, but it flopped. But it's nice to see its place in Marvel's cartoon history canonized right here. And then we see What If, an amazing show created by Ashley Bradley, followed by a shot of Marvel Zombies, which I believe is still releasing this year. Keep track these days. And then we get to the new intro. And I gotta tell you guys, there are a lot of Easter eggs and tiny details to notice in the intro, so dig in. This is going to be so good. Now, there are lots of similarities and, more importantly, differences to the classic intro that we all know and love. First of all, notice it's in widescreen format, like the rest of the episode. But also notice, and we'll go frame by frame here, Rogue and Storm are moving at different frame rates from each other and from the Blackbird.
What do you mean?
Well, in animation, the animators typically don't animate every single frame. It would be too expensive. Instead, they usually do every other frame, like the original animated series. That is called animating on twos. And in this intro, you can see that Rogue and Storm are animated on twos, but slightly staggered, while the Blackbird is animated on threes. This creates a sense of distance from the ship. It's further away, so it's moving slower. This is an example of the higher animation budget that we're going to be seeing in this show. There's also a slight redesign for Rogue, where we can see more detail in her hair, like the individual white strands, instead of the solid skunk trail she had in the original show. I should note here that the character designs here are mostly based off the early 90s redesigns by Jim Lee, and they almost had to change the original show last minute after Jim Lee left Marvel to co-found Image Comics.
Yeah, Marvel can be petty sometimes.
Now, this intro was originally designed for a very practical reason. The show needed a way to introduce a dozen characters to kids every week. At one point, actually, Stan Lee was adamant that he be allowed to narrate the show from behind a desk like he was Walt Disney.
Wow, that man loved the camera.
Yes, he did, R.I.P. But luckily, the producers stood their ground and created this iconic intro instead. Storm is wearing the same uniform, but you'll notice that her hair has changed to a mohawk. Now, this is part of her iconic redesign by artist Paul Smith in the 1980s. It leads into one of her most famous comic stories that I'm not going to spoil for you right now. Basically, Storm spent her whole life trying to contain her emotions so she wouldn't lose control of the weather, which we did actually see in the episode Savage Land, Savage Heart.
I must keep my emotions in check, lest my powers rage out of control.
But in the comics, as she started to embrace her emotions and her sexuality, she cut loose by getting a mohawk. As before, the camera moves into the cockpit, but now they've added Morph, Beast, and Bishop. We also see Jean actually using her powers and not just standing passively beside Cyclops. So Morph was added to the team so he could die in the first episode. In fact, they were originally going to use Thunderbird, a team member who permanently died in the comics after only about 3 issues with the team. This is why Thunderbird's brother, Warpath, is on the villain's side in the intro. But instead of killing off their only Native American character in one episode, they created Morph instead. Now, they intended for him to stay dead, but apparently little kids love the guy, so they brought him back. But now he's been adapted into the nothing facelift that he had in the comic book Age of Apocalypse, which I actually believe is the first place he appeared in actual Marvel comic book canon. Beast was also originally added as a junior member to the team, but the writers loved writing for him so much because he was such a wordsmith.
Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day.
And Bishop was originally supposed to join the team permanently at the end of Season 4. See, originally the creators thought that Season 4 was going to be their last season. So they wrote an ending where Cyclops, Jean, Xavier, and Storm were going to leave the team. And Archangel, Psylocke, Bishop, and Shard were going to join the team in their place. But then they were picked up for Season 5, so they lopped off that original ending off the episode. The downside of this was that most of the original animation team had already left, and Saban Baton took a greater hand in Season 5, hiring super cheap animators to create the show. That's why half of Season 5 looks so incredibly different.
Right.
Oh, okay.
By the way, we talked about all those facts and more in our Why the X-Men is Great video, which is up on the channel right now. So notice one difference here is that we don't see Scott's eyeballs through the ruby quartz visor in the intro, although later on we do see the animators using the glints of his glasses to express his changes in mood. So the intro kicks off with the explosion of the atomic bomb. The X-Men were always called the children of the atom because of the assumption that radiation caused worldwide genetic mutation. Cyclops is losing control of his powers on a mesa, and this spot is actually very important for the character. When Jean Grey was Phoenix, she used her telekinetic abilities to hold back his optic glass so she could see his eyes.
Only a person. The universe has a way of making sure we wind up exactly where we belong. Open them. You can't hurt me.
Now this was a deeply personal moment for Scott.
What the fuck? What the fuck?
That is often revisited in the comics. Jean has also moved up to number 2 in the intro, showing her increased importance on the team. And now she's also wearing her hair down, which makes me wonder, is this even the real Jean? Wolverine starts off in his underwear to show how, before becoming a superhero, he was running around the woods in an animalistic berserker rage. He was actually shirtless briefly in the original intro, but for a much shorter time, so it was like harder to see it. And Morph has been added to the intro with this sans serif font that looks like it could shift and change just like his abilities. Beast is now in an actual environment, not
That
just a
makes
single line behind it,
sense.
showing the
That's
higher
clever.
And we see the same with this sans serif font that looks like it could shift and change.
That's
just like
clever.
Beast is now in an
Yeah.
actual environment, not just a single line behind him, showing the higher animation budget. And we see the same with Gambit, who is now in a forest. In fact, this setting looks a lot like the forest where they suffered a major defeat in the very first episode, Night of the Sentinels. Bishop has also been added in, and Professor X is still there, so clearly he's not dead.
I'm not dead.
Now, notice this difference. As Rogue flips the Sentinels, the camera focuses on her face. This is actually taken from the original storyboards for the opening, which were scaled back for budget reasons. Next, we see Morph fighting against Mr. Sinister, and he looks frightened. So, in the original show, the X-Men were forced to abandon Morph on a mission, and they thought he was dead. But in reality, he was saved by the villain Mr. Sinister. Sinister brainwashed Morph into hating the X-Men.
I'll destroy them all. All the X-Men.
Also, notice this sweet shot lifted straight from Apocalypse Now. So Morph struggled with his PTSD throughout the original series, eventually overcoming his fear of the Sentinels by taking down Master Mold single-handedly, proving why he was always a badass member of the team who was extremely underrated. And I love the little detail in the intro here, how we see Sinister reflected in his eyeball, hinting that Morph may not be fully free from his mind control. It's a great touch. And then we get the famous flashing shot where the X-Men run into their villains. Now, the villains in the original lineup didn't really make sense. After all, they did make the intro before they actually made the show. In addition to the aforementioned Warpath, there was Gargoyle, the first villain that Hulk ever faced, who actually had nothing to do with the X-Men, but he briefly appeared in the episode Slave Island. And actually, fun note here, this is kind of personal. I remember being a kid and pausing the VHS tape so I could see who the civilians were, if they were like characters from the comics. That was my very first Easter egg hunt. So, the new villain lineup includes Magneto, Juggernaut, and Whitewing, who we last saw in Season 4, Lady Deathstrike, aka Yuriko, Wolverine's lost love. Fun tidbit about her, the animators gave her so much cleavage in her original episode that they had to go back and redraw every frame and give her a white t-shirt. Otherwise, she would have scared the children.
Oh, somebody please pick up the children.
And there's also Mystique and the mutants that she works with, Avalanche and Pyro. So Mystique spent the early seasons working for villains like Sinister and Apocalypse before she ultimately cut a deal with the mutant-hating Friends of Humanity. But that episode led her into an emotional confrontation with her son, Nightcrawler, where she ended up taking a bullet for him. So this implied that she might become more of an anti-hero in the show. And in the comics, she does eventually lead a government task force of villains called Freedom Force, consisting of Pyro and Avalanche, who have also been added to the intro. And finally, there's Wolverine's old foe, Sabretooth. So the title of this episode is To Me, My X-Men, which are the closing words of the first issue of the comic. And this has become the X-Men's version of Avengers Assemble. In this episode, we see Cyclops struggling with trying to fill Xavier's shoes. So when he says the line,
To me, my X-Men.
it's a moment where he is admitting that he is ready to continue on without the professor. We start on an image of Times Square showing, among other things, 99-cent coffee.
Boy, those were the days.
We also see a billboard for Vistacore, the company that Scott Lang worked for and ripped off money from, the Stark Industries logo, a WHIH billboard. Now, WHIH is the indie
Not
network to
WHIH.
release digital shorts.
Anything with WHIH is gonna go.
About his criminal past.
Mr. Lang, how are you?
Well, I'm still in prison, so, you know, bad.
Now, even though we're told to see a period of relative peace between mutants and humans, we see anti-mutant graffiti. Mutants are monsters, and trust no mutants. Also, this shop is called Future Comms, but it sells high-end technology like pagers.
Costa buys their pictures online. Hilarious!
And this flyer says report mutants. And in the alley, we see the Morlocks of Legion Callisto hiding in the shadows, showing that the streets aren't safe for unattractive mutants like themselves. Although, as we'll see in a second, attractive mutants are being celebrated by the upper classes in so fashion shows. We get a quick news report catching us up on what's happened since the show ended, which is exactly how the original series began. This report tells us that the world believes that Xavier is dead and reminds us that Gyrick pulled the trigger on Xavier. Now, Gyrick is a character from the comics who was always an antagonist to mutants, but he was also the Avengers government liaison. He was a lot of the time less of a villain and more of a normal guy who distrusted anyone with superpowers. But in the show, he has always been a full-on bigot, secretly starting this anti-mutant program with trash. This flyer outside reads missing, and to me, this looks like the mutant Yukio, who was a Japanese ally of Logan's during the Chris Claremont X-Men books. But now she's probably better known for this. We go to Robert DaCosta, aka Sunspot, who is a founding member of the New Mutants in the comics. The New Mutants are a team of younger students that spun off from the X-Men. Last season, we met another founding member of the team, Sam Guthrie, also known as Cannonball. So, I'm kind of wondering if X-Men 97 is slowly building us up to a New Mutant spin-off series. DaCosta has a control collar that neutralizes mutant powers, like the ones we first saw in the Genosha episode Slave Island back in Season 1. He's been kidnapped by the Friends of Humanity, the evil clan-like organization that we last saw in the Season 4 episode Bloodlines, where they full-on wore clan hoods. Now, right away, we get a piece of dialogue that is repeated from the Season 2 introduction of the Friends of Humanity.
What did we ever do to you?
You were born.
I was born this way.
Ain't that the rub?
And
Lord,
then Storm
have mercy.
Burson, and her intro is so similar to her speech from the pilot.
I don't like anything, but Downy Light is just right.
After you work out, you can feel worn out. Reach for core power and rise to a whole new level of recovery.
Woo! Bruh.
Mistress of the elements commands you to release that child. I am Scorn, mistress of the elements. Surrender the boy or face my fury.
The pilot episode slowly introduced the X-Men to the audience as they showed up one at a time to rescue Jubilee. And this pilot is following the same pattern. And I love how she's introduced, like a goddess looking down at these mere mortals. She is so much more badass than she has ever been in the movies, especially when they forced poor Halle Berry to say this line.
I know that happens to a tall woman that's struck by lightning. The same thing happens to human beings.
I think it's interesting that the Friends of Humanity's new weapons are these arm cannons that they wear instead of hold, like regular guns. It shows how human beings are evolving to become more machine-like and embrace technology to counter the evolution of the human race. Except this evolution, becoming more machine-like, will actually cost them their humanity instead of protecting it. This was hinted at by Master Mold's ultimate plot in the season finale of Season 1.
We remove Senator Kelly's brain and replace it with a computer.
And then Bishop enters. Now, his ability is to absorb and redirect energy. Bishop is actually from an apocalyptic future where Sentinels have killed most of the X-Men, and he traveled to the present day to prevent that future from happening. Now, it used to be that when he had his time band removed, he would automatically slink back to his time. But maybe that's not the case after he entered the Axis of Time in Season 4. Cyclops entered, and much of his fight is a pretty long single take. Now, notice this move he uses a lot, where he uses his eye beams on somebody's knee to knock them off balance, and then he puts them down. It's a really cool fighting detail that we never would have gotten in the original series because of the lower animation budget. But, just to remind us that this is the 90s, Cyclops lays down this 20th century zinger. find a newspaper dressed by that's filled with Easter eggs. We see the aforementioned Baton mutant fashion show, where at least one person is dressed up like Banshee, the mutant who makes this sound when he flies. This is the same Daily Bugle masthead from the Spider-Man Raimi movies, and not the Daily Bugle from Spider-Man the Animated Series, which actually takes place in the same universe as these X-Men. And here we see a blurb about the Hellfire Gala. The Hellfire Club are a group of aristocratic Illuminati mutants who the X-Men fought back in Season 3. And the Gala story is photographed by one Peter Parker and reporter Eddie Brock, who goes on to become Venom. Now the problem here is that Eddie becomes Venom in Season 1.
Hello. Yes, sir. This is the maintenance man. I'm just calling back to confirm that we did not take that washer because we do not move any appliances while it's raining nor wet. So that definitely was not us. Right. Well, it definitely wasn't us, sir. So I think you should file a police report on that. You should file a police report on that and let the office know in the morning. Yes, because it's stolen property. So you got to let them know first, and then you got to let the office know in the morning. Actually, in the morning would be better. That way, everybody can actually get stuff together. So yeah, in the morning would be perfect. All right, sir. You have a good night. All righty. stupid ass over here, bro.
Spider-Man.
Nigga barely fucking talk, man. Nigga probably high as hell. Probably just noticed nigga probably been in that bitch all day and just noticed that motherfucker got stolen. I'm like, get the fuck out of here, bro. Come on, call here. Yo, emergency hotline for that shit, bitch. Call 911. Stupid dumb bitch. Like, come on, bro.
Or they're not even in the same universe.
Make it make sense. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. I understand you want to confirm that we are taking now, but nah. I ain't gonna lie. I saw that bitch out there, and I was like, did they take an old washer out and just left it there, or what? Like, I don't know. I didn't touch it though. I didn't even tell my fucking supervisor about it. You know, like, look at that shit. Nobody ain't complaining about that shit right there. No, I ain't gonna lose that bitch. Fuck it.
It's in the same universe as these X-Men, and here we see a blurb about the Hellfire Gala. The Hellfire Club are a group of aristocratic Illuminati mutants who the X-Men fought back in Season 3. And the Gala story is photographed by one Peter Parker and reporter Eddie Brock, who goes on to become Venom. Now the problem here is that Eddie becomes Venom in Season 1 of Spider-Man the Animated Series, but Spider-Man crosses over with the X-Men in Season 2. So I guess that means that the X-Men crossover episodes actually align with the X-Men 97 timeline.
Or they're not even in the same universe.
Good point. The other blurb asks if Spider-Man is a mutant, which was a point of contention in those crossover episodes.
Accept it, but I don't want to be a freak. Watch your mouth.
Back at the mansion, Gambit is in the kitchen where he and Jean had a famous argument in the Warlock's Christmas episode.
If you want to keep that hand, stay away.
Gambit's just trying to help.
And just in case you forgot it's the 90s, he's wearing a glorious cut-off t-shirt.
Goldfish and chips. Together as one. New Goldfish Crisps. Light and airy. Totally irresistible. Taste how Goldfish does chips.
Yep. Burger King is definitely killing McDonald's and burgers. I'll guarantee that. Fuck, I almost got a chicken sandwich from fucking from Burger King, but I was like, nah, I want a burger. I want a burger.
Yo, listen up. Here's the story. And then Morph enters posing as the professor, and he also posed as the professor in the series finale Graduation Day.
The trick to coming off well on television is to be yourself. Or then again, maybe not.
And it turns out that Jean is now pregnant, which is interesting. That can lead into a whole other storyline that I'll explain when we talk about episode 2. Roberto wakes up, just like Jubilee did in the pilot, and also like Jubilee, the first person he sees is Beast hanging upside down. Now on the bookshelf here we see a book by Jay Gould, a nod to Julia Gould, the co-creator of the original series. And there is a copy of Animal Farm, which the Beast was reading in prison back in episode 3.
Look at the title, Animal Farm. He's just looking at the pictures.
The music he's listening to is Dear Hala Racha from Mozart's The Magic Flute, an opera about a young prince in a strange land. Just as Roberto is a young, wealthy man awakening in a strange land, the X-Mansion. Beast says,
Nick McCoy here. Or if you prefer my friendly nom de guerre, Beast.
another callback to the pilot. In the Danger Room, we see a nightmare scenario play out where Magneto destroyed the UN and rallied mutant kind to his cause. And we saw a similar situation almost play out in the finale of the original series. And this is also foreshadowing a possible outcome of what happens in episode 2. So this is all raising suspense for that episode. Wolverine is introduced in the Danger Room just like he was in the pilot. And then we see Scott in the professor's office looking original uniforms from the comics, with Iceman being covered in snow and wearing boots just like he did in the original books. Now we saw a brief flashback of the original 5 in past episodes of the series, and notice how Beast looks more human and he's not furry and blue. In that Spider-Man crossover episode, we got a hint that Beast ran an experiment on himself that caused this additional mutation, or at least that he tried to reverse the mutation.
Remember how eager you were to find a cure for your growing mutancy? So eager that you risked destroying yourself in the process.
I also appreciate how the drawing is done in the style of Jack Kirby, the originator and co-creator of the X-Men. Scott is talking to Valerie Cooper, an important character from the comics. She worked for the government and formed the Task Force Freedom Force, which we talked about earlier in the comics, she becomes the government liaison to X Factor, the government mutant team that we did see in the original series. But in the comics, she was originally a bit more antagonistic to the X-Men, more like a less bigoted guy. She name drops Dr. Trask, the man who invented the mutant hunting sentinel robots. Now, in the first season, the X-Men's main antagonist was a huge robot named Master Mold, whose fatal weakness was also his greatest strength, electricity.
I am still plugged in.
And Master Mold's machine logic also undermined his creator's anti-mutant logic.
That is not logical. Mutants are human.
Outside, the team is playing basketball, just like they did in the premiere episode of Season 3, where he pulled the ultimate dick move. In both episodes, the game is modeled closely after this one from X-Men issue 4, when they wore almost the same outfits. Now, up in the office, we see the professor's death certificate, which reads 11/11/96. So, he died on Armistice Day. Fitting, since his death seems to have created a peace between mutants and humans. Scott remembers the professor saying,
"Your childish hijinks have cost you 5 demerits, young man."
and this is one thing the professor would say in the original comics all the time. But he also tried that crap out on Wolverine when he returned to the team years later, and that did not fly with the older X-Men.
Stop! Demerits!
So, Jean
Demerit!
they don't have a future with just the two of them. Now, this is playing off her concern from the end of season 1 when Scott proposed to her.
If we have children, they'll be mutants. They'll face the same problems we have all their lives.
And then the picture of the original class breaks because of the X-Men goofing off. Symbolically, this is showing how the new X-Men are breaking the traditions that were set down by the original team because they are representing the changing of the times. Wolverine is back to clashing with Scott like they did in the first season of the show.
Want to know the worst part about the professor being gone? You.
Now, in the showrunner's original story Bible, they made sure to include that even though Logan gave Scott a hard time, he respected the team leader because he was such a fierce warrior. The X-Men are looking for Bolivar Trask, blaming him for the professor's condition, probably because Trask must have built the power-amplifying device that Gyrich used on Xavier. The last time we saw Trask, he and Gyrich were fighting out together.
Because you couldn't control your creations, we've got to hide in a stinking jungle for the rest of our lives!
Then they enter a race between Roberto, and then Rogue gets her sad, horny Southern girl moment.
Sad, horny Southern girl.
I also thought that Rogue's longing to touch someone else was kind of an extension of like Southern morality. Like how in the Bible Belt, the rules are more strict about who a young lady can have relations with. Wolverine is wearing the same casual outfit he always wore in the original series, and Morph is being a real dick to his friend, teasing him about his unrequited love for Jean.
Oh, hello, you on the sidelines, watching our exhausting perfection every day.
That love is, of course, the source of the famous Wolverine photo meme that gets called back a little later in this episode. Jubilee finds Roberto, and we get to see Jubilee use her powers just to have fun. Now, Roberto is kind of apathetic to the plight of mutants, and he just wants to be left alone. I mean, this is the perfect Gen Xer for the perfect Gen X TV show. They go see Gyrich at Rikers Island, the same prison where Beast was being held in season 1 of the original series. Gyrich lays out the mission statement for bigotry.
Order Popeye's new honey lemon pepper wings.
Honey lemon
6
pepper
piece free when
wings?
you spend $10 on
Honey lemon pepper? Stupid looking at. I still haven't tried the fucking wings yet at Popeyes. Nobody fucking Popeyes. They do that shit with churches though. I'm trying to see what's them about. Dum 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 dum. Trying to see what them about. Dum 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 dum. Trying to see what them about.
And the counter to his argument is something that Magneto actually says at his trial in the comics, that mutants are humanity's children. In other words, mutants are not the end of the human race, they are the continuation of the human race. Whereas Master Mold represents a force that wants to make the human race extinct and replace them with machines. And then we get this good cop, bad cop moment, which seems lifted from the interrogation scene in The Dark Knight. So, when Jean reads Trask's mind, something goes wrong. And this is like the big mystery of the series.
Something's wrong. Someone else.
Who else? It seems like another telepath is interfering here. Now, this could be
Right.
a villain like the White Queen or Shadow King, or it could be the Phoenix Force. Or I'm wondering if this is actually her mutant unborn son, Nathaniel, showing her a vision. And also, these black
Not for
doors are
real.
the manifestation of Roberto's powers in the comics, so maybe he's more important to this season than the first episode Jean sees her child wrapped in an X-Men blanket, just like what happens in episode 2. And then she sees a grave extinction lifted straight from the comic book Days of the Future Past. Or this could be a vision of the mutant graveyard that Rachel Summers sees in later issues of X-Men. Rachel was the future daughter of Cyclops and Jean, who could be reaching out to her mother from the future of their time stream. And that would actually line up with this era from the comics when Rachel became a member of the team. But we're going to talk about Rachel Summers in our episode 2 video. And then a talking whirlwind says, teasing another mystery for the show. Who the hell is this? What is happening? I do have some theories, but I'm going to save them for our episode 2 video. Finally, she sees Master Mold being reborn, and then she dies in an atomic explosion very similar to Sarah Connor's visions in Terminator 2. So the team heads to the Sahara, and after the Blackbird is destroyed, they fall through the air, exactly like one of the new X-Men's first missions from the comics. Morph turns into Archangel to save everyone. And here, I want to point out that Morph is a badass. In Season 4, he overcame his Sentinel PSD and transformed into several different mutants, mimicking their powers and taking down Master Mold all by himself. Now, Archangel was once just called Angel. He was a founding member of the X-Men, who got his metal wings after Apocalypse brainwashed him. Then he spent years searching for a way to defeat Apocalypse before he finally let go of his hatred. Like I said earlier, he was originally going to join the team at the end of Season 4. Scott does that superhero no parachute thing using his optic blast to soften the ground, which I actually think would have made the ground into glass, but whatever, it looks cool.
Superhero landing! Yeah, that's good.
And then he says the line.
To me, my X-Men.
Showing that he is now fully embracing his new role as the X-Men's only leader. When they encounter Trask, Sentinels come out of the ground like zombies, symbolic of how they represent the death of mutant kind, and symbolic of how, no matter how many times you wipe them out, the Sentinels never stay gone. It is interesting that Trask wants to rebuild Master Mold, though, because the AI rebelled against him and humanity back in Season 1.
You remove Senator Kelly's brain and replace it with a computer.
And just, guys, how great is it to just watch the X-Men kick some ass with that theme? Beast lays down some prose asking a Sentinel to change his heart while he's actually swapping places with its heart and takes control of it. And then he says,
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful and voluntary friendship.
which is a riff on the last line from Casablanca.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
And then this Sentinel says, now, Omega level is a designation given to only the most powerful mutants, like Apocalypse, Magneto, or Storm. And I love this theme, how it starts off with a piano, with trickling rain, before it becomes a full-on choir, showing the ascension of a goddess. Because, remember, when Xavier recruited Storm, she was posing as a goddess on the plains of Kenya. Like, I love getting to watch superheroes work in conjunction together. Like how Bishop shields Gambit and then releases the energy. Or how Gambit rides on Wolverine's back and then uses his powers to energize Wolverine's claws. And then Morph becomes the blob to bounce Wolverine into the air so he can decapitate Master Mold, which is a lot more badass than this.
I am still good.
And right here, after the battle, you can see the little glimmer they added in Scott's visor to make him more expressive. It's a very cool detail. Later on, as
Man, they gotta give Storm back her powers, man. They gotta give her back her powers, bro.
Team had saved me from Sentinels at the mall.
And she also says,
Sure, Cyclops still won't let me fly the jet.
because there was a past episode when she ended up hijacking the Blackbird.
I've locked up in 300 hours.
Simulator?
And then in a show of Team Unity, Cyclops shows up to game, dressed a lot like Woody Harrelson and White Men Can't Jump. And then the team discovers that Magneto has broken into Xavier's office. He uses his powers to repair the photo of the original team, symbolic of how he has arrived to take control of the school. He now has long hair, like he did in the 90s comics, and his last few appearances on the original show. When he delivers the will to Scott, notice how the metal binding glows, to show that he is using his powers on this specific part of the book. He says,
Everything he built, everything he fought for, now belongs to me.
which shouldn't be a surprise. Xavier always hoped that Magneto would join him in his dreams.
Then join me in my work. That can never be.
And the idea that Magneto would join the team was from the Chris Claremont era. In the comics, Xavier left Earth and asked Magneto to lead the team in X-Men number 200. Claremont's original plan was to kill off Xavier and have Magneto do a full face turn.
I mean, my plan was by 300 to have Charlie killed and Magneto become the permanent head of the school.
Magneto then became a superhero for a while, wearing the hilarious M costume that he wears in the next episode, and then, finally, he invokes the title.
My X-Men.
Which is meant to sound sinister, but it could just be how Magneto talks. Either way, it represents a changing of the guard, and I can't wait to see what happens next. And then And the credits are the old school credits from season 1 with the rudimentary computer animation to spell out each mutant's powers in these files. Well guys, that's all the Easter eggs we found in episode 1. If you found any, let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan here.
Y'all don't understand, but that shit is fucking dope. Dope, 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 dope. Shit is fucking dope, 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 dope. Niggas talking on the shit, get up with it. Roll around with the fuck, and I'm ready.
Try Cascade Platinum
I don't
Plus.
wanna try that shit, bitch. Stupid ass bitch. Hoe ass bitch. Talking all this shit because you think you know your shit, bitch. Fuck you think you is, hoe. And you know what? I ain't gonna watch the second episode breakdown. So tomorrow we're gonna watch the second episode breakdown. We're gonna watch the new Rockstars breakdown. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe. Most likely. I don't know. Most likely not though. But yeah, whenever I do come back on this bitch, we gonna watch the other breakdowns and then we gonna go into the reactions, you know. And so yeah, it ain't a lot, so we got a good amount of time to make something work. And that is exactly what we're gonna do, because that is exactly what we do. You feel me? Not for real though, 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 not for real though.
Mike camped out in our rehearsal space, just trying to write this song, and he came out the next morning with this piano riff and this beat, and we all heard it. We're like, oh wow, that's amazing.
It starts with I don't know why, it doesn't even matter how hard you try.
In the end,